Good morning. Thanks everybody for being here. We appreciate you coming. It's a good group. We are honored to once again be here in the Idaho Capitol doing the work of the people, we the people. We'd like to take a moment and thank our veterans and active military members for their service to our country. We would also like to take a moment to remember Bo Bergdahl, who remains a prisoner of war. We offer our prayers for his health and his return home to his family. We also want to note that we believe that Idaho could do better in recognizing the debt that we owe to our veterans for serving their country. Our veterans struggle to find employment, adequate health care, and the mental health services they need. Idaho Democratic lawmakers pledge to support veterans and their families through our work in this legislature and our communities. As we begin this session, we want to take a moment to remind you of the work we are building on from last year. For the first time in a long time, we found Republican colleagues who are willing to put partisan politics aside and cooperate to find the best solutions for Idaho's families. It is our hope that we have the same spirit of cooperation this year. Given that some of the majority party will have opposition in the primary elections, some predict a legislature light, where many of the major issues and decisions will either be deferred or even buried in the rush to get out of town. We believe it is our responsibility to put the people's priorities first. We believe that decades of one-party rule has resulted in a system that is rigged against regular Idaho families.
Hardworking Idaho families are struggling with an unfair high cost of living. In many cases, the jobs available are part-time, low wage, and without benefits. We're dismayed that Idaho is now 50th in the nation for wages. Our public schools, which open the doors to success for many young people, are suffering from years of legislative neglect, resulting in rising local property taxes that hurt working families, businesses, and the elderly. Every decision Idaho Democrats make this session will be guided by whether we believe Idaho families and small businesses will benefit. We'll work hard to ensure that our freedoms are protected, that opportunities are created, and that we're passing a strong legacy on to our children. We want Idaho to be a place where our children can choose to live and work and stay to raise a family. We see that the governor has a robust revenue projection, and we hope he's correct. But we disagree with the proposal that the return of economic growth should be given to the affluent as more tax cuts. Indeed, that has already been tried at the cost of decreasing our investment in education. This is not only bad for the future of our children because it robs them of the opportunities to succeed in life, but it's bad for our Idaho economy because it discourages businesses that offer high-paying careers from moving to Idaho or from expanding here in Idaho. We do not believe that the governor and other GOP politicians are helping hardworking families when they give tax cuts to the wealthiest Idahoans. It would have made far greater sense to focus those breaks on families who dearly need a fair chance at an opportunity and a better future. It's worth noting that while things are better with regards to the number of employed, too many are still in low-wage jobs. This low-wage trap will only get worse if we're not using the rising revenue to lift the hopes of those families. To provide a path of opportunity, it's simply unacceptable that Idaho's elected leaders have allowed our state to lead the nation in the percentage of minimum wage jobs and again, be 50th in wages. It's equally appalling that our leaders would actively seek to worsen that standing by attempting to lure companies here on the promise that they can pay Idahoans low wages.
We believe that all our policies in the state, whether it's the work of the Department of Commerce, any of the other executive branches, or the efforts in our legislature, should be based on the idea that no family should be impoverished if they are working full-time. Idaho has not discouraged low-wage paying businesses from settling here, but we do not believe that a successful 21st century economy can be built this way. Any time not spent seeking ways of fostering and attracting high-paying industries is time misspent. We want companies that pay living wages. We want companies that will help make Idaho a leader in wages. The tie between education and the economy is undeniable. For that reason, we are grateful that Governor Otter restates his belief that public education, K through 12, or as he calls it, K through career, should be the top priority for the legislature. While K through career sounds good, we submit that the governor has again missed an opportunity. Based on all that is known about children's brain development, we believe that the governor should have called for pre-K through career. Idaho cannot afford any other missed opportunity, and we hope the governor and the legislature will embrace our modest proposal for pre-K pilot programs. We also commend the governor for his approval to ramp up investment in workforce training. However, the effectiveness of those funding programs need to be tracked. Sometimes
rhetoric outstrips reality, and our budgeting shows our values. Idaho's public schools have seen deep cuts. The majority claims that these cuts were the unfortunate result of a national recession. We strongly disagree. These cuts were choices, intentional and deliberate choices. Education funding as a share of state spending has actually decreased 11% in this decade. Instead of investing in education, the majority took money from schools and colleges. They did it over the objection of university presidents, educators, businesses, parents, and yes, us Democrats. As a result, public school support is still $100 million lower than what Idaho provided going into the Great Recession. Local school districts have been generous in approving levies by increasing property taxes to keep operations going. Since 2009, the number of school overrides has more than doubled from 41 to 89 districts. They're districts seeking funds for basic operations. That's out of 115 school districts. This attempt to shift financial responsibility must end. Idaho's budget policy is starving schools. Every community that has to pass a school override levy to pay for basic school services knows that. Every rural school district that goes from a 5-day to a 4-day week knows that. Make no mistake, no school district in Idaho has gone to a 4-day school week, has dropped extracurriculars, or has increased class sizes because it promotes educational performance. They did it because they were desperately going broke. We reject the glib retort that money does not equate to better education. Can anyone seriously say that a drop of $930 per child is anything but harmful? If replacing funding in K-12 and higher education was a top priority, why do we see tax cut proposals year after year and only puny little efforts to replace that education fund? How does that improve the economy and opportunity for families? We also believe that the governor has done Idaho a disservice by taking Medicaid redesign off the table. Not only is it financially irresponsible, it's clinically inappropriate. And we know that there are Republican legislators who agree with us on that.
Idahoans believe that access to public lands to hunt, fish, or hike is one of the greatest legacies that we leave to our children. Idaho Democrats will work to protect that gift. Current proposals to take control of public lands threatens that legacy. We simply do not believe that we have to choose between clean air, clean water, and businesses, between recreation and our economic development. With wisdom and leadership, we can have both. There is a harsh reality here. 20 years of GOP control of Idaho politics has led us to the bottom of the 50th in family wages per capita income, 50th in school support, and the highest percentage of minimum wage workers. And we believe that those measurements, education support and household economy, are related. The first step to climbing out is to face the truth with courtesy and honesty. We cannot just wait until next year when no one is up for re-election. Idaho families deserve leadership and opportunity now. For our parts, Idaho Democratic lawmakers will consider every proposal that has the potential to improve our economy, help our businesses, and benefit our families. We will partner with anyone who has this shared goal. Some of our caucus will present bills designed to help students go on in tech and college training. We will try to focus on some of the tools that work for kids, like pre-K. We will offer opportunities to improve government effectiveness and transparency. And we will offer inducements for business expansion tied not to capital investments, but to jobs and wages actually achieved. We will do all we can to find partners to make those bills laws. We will also do all we can to see that the recommendations of the Governor's Education Task Force become law. These thoughtful, dedicated people found common ground and compromised. We intend to follow their example.
Remember, all of our decisions are guided by whether a policy will improve the lives of Idaho families, children, and improve Idaho businesses. It's a simple measure. We welcome any proposal that aims to achieve that simple goal and levels the playing field by treating regular Idahoans fairly. In that spirit, Idaho's Democratic leaders do not view this legislative session as an impediment to re-election or as a platform for re-election. We view it as a sacred trust placed in us by our constituents to do our level best for them and for the state of Idaho. Thank you, and we'll take questions should you have any.
Representative Rushi, you mentioned that you believe there are Republican counterparts that would agree with the Democratic Party on Medicaid expansion. Do you think there are enough that if a piece of legislation was actually presented that you could get it passed?
I don't know. I don't know that, whether there's a majority of the House. I do know that there's significant interest in the proper tax relief that Medicaid redesign would offer, and also in the help to the general fund through the CAP fund. Many more are interested in what it would mean as far as our mental health services that are still woefully underfunded. Yeah, there's some that will. I'm not sure what the politics will dictate that they do. Betsy.
I heard no mention of the question of state employee pay. The legislature has convened its CEC committee this year for the first time in 6 years. The governor has proposed 0 for raises for state employees and continuing to rely on salary savings to give any raises that are handed out. What is the Democrats' position?
Our position is that when you're 19% below the market and you have statutory responsibility, as we do in Idaho, to pay at the market, that we're not fulfilling our responsibilities. However, in our mind, the biggest issue for Idaho right now is the economy, the family economy. Certainly low wages for state employees is part of that, but the bigger deal for us is how to get Idaho out of the wage trap where we're 50th in the nation for average wages and have a higher percentage of minimum wage jobs than any place else.
But wouldn't that be related, having low state employee pay?
As I said, I think it is part of why we have a low household income. However, I think there's more to the state than just employee wages too.
Is there, excuse me, is there not a caucus position then yet on the question of whether there should be a pay raise for state employees?
We have not voted a caucus position. We'd like, you have to remember that the CEC, we pushed for CEC every year. Not only a change in employee compensation, but for a CEC committee to at least meet and discuss it. We were able to get that far this year. There is a committee to meet and discuss it. We think it works best if we're all coming at this together. You and I both know that if the Democrats proposed a salary increase without having the support of the majority, that it goes 0, it'd go nowhere. So understanding the situation, making sure that we're available to help our compatriots on the other side, and then working collaboratively to help that out, I think is the best way to do it. Other questions?
There was legislation that the Democrats unveiled before the session started to place the recommendations of the governor's education task force into law. And at that time, Tom Luna endorsed those bills. What are you planning to do on those bills? When will you bring them out? What is your strategy and plan?
The bills are drafted. I've not been in charge of that process. Hy and Janie and Grant and Donna have done that. It's my belief that they'll be out shortly. Now, remember what I said just not 30 seconds ago, that we cannot make things happen by ourselves, but we can help lead in the direction. And there's almost universal agreement on the broad strokes of the task force. What has to happen is, of course, fleshing out the skeleton that the recommendations made. And so we will work collaboratively, strongly endorsing and strongly working towards that. To that end, we will introduce bills. Grant, go ahead.
Yeah, these bills will be offered for introduction in either the House or the Senate Education Committees very shortly. There are some coordination issues we need to work out with the governor's office, with the superintendent, and with others. It is, in my estimation, quite a bipartisan effort. You will recall that the superintendent was supportive when the bills were announced, as was the governor, who welcomed our efforts. These bills, I think, are going to set a framework for what we're shooting for in education. And the issue becomes, once we have this framework in place, how we're going to fund it. And I might say here that the governor has apparently, according to press reports, which may have been more incisive about the numbers than my own calculations, estimated $37 to $40 million in new money for education this year. And you know, the framework calls for us to shoot higher than that. It doesn't mandate it, but it is an aspirational goal. And that framework is going to take quite a bit more than that. And I think if you look in the governor's budget and you look at what he set aside for tax relief and you look at what he set aside for savings accounts, you can get the state of Idaho in terms of new education dollars much closer to the $90 to $100 million mark. And that's probably where we ought to be looking.
Other questions? Well, if none, thank you for your time. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm just curious.
Yeah, don't be slow, Bill. Come on.
I am. I'm somewhat slow this year. Representative, I'm curious. I mean, the constant mantra from the Republicans in the legislature is limited government, limited spending increases, suspicion of the federal government. I'm just curious whether you feel like, as Democrats, you're just arguing against the Republican majority in the legislature, or whether you feel that that is the general sentiment in Idaho that you're having to push against.
Well, I think there is a general sentiment that we don't like to be told what to do. But I think that people look to the outcome. Isn't that the mantra of education? Let's have standards and let's look to the outcome. Well, what is the outcome? That we're lowest in the country, that we have the lowest percentage of minimum wage workers, that we have a real deficit of skilled workers, that we have young people leaving the state. What is the outcome? And until we get people to realize the outcome is related to the process, and that process being improvements in education and in education support. That's what we're trying to go at. And I think people understand that. Others?
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. You sure you're not, don't have another one there, Bill? You're good.